Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. As we always do, we're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. Today, we're very lucky to hear from the Doge Update Guy. Who is he? How in the world did this finance bro become a political internet sensation? Being an expert on all things Doge, what does he think about all that's transpired over the past handful of months? We're going to find out together, but first things first, let's tell the world your real name, because I'm certainly not going to refer to you as the Doge Update Guy or Doug for sure throughout this interview. So it's Aaron. What a great name. Sure. And a very warm welcome to you, sir, Aaron. And thank you for coming on Politically Basic.
Well, Kyle, I appreciate you having me on. This is the very first time I've been interviewed, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So I hope we can have a great show and knock it out of the park for everybody.
We certainly will, and I'm honored that you would come on Politically Basic for your first official pod interview. So lots to get to, but I think the world just wants to know how you came to be the Doge Update Guy.
Well, I can tell you, I've been a political news junkie forever, and it started when I graduated from high school in 1991. My dad asked me, son, who are you going to vote for? And that was the very first election I was ever going to be able to vote for president in. And I said, well, Dad, I'm going to vote for Bill Clinton. And the look of horror and shame that came over his face was, I'm like, what's the matter, Dad? He's like, son, you have a mind full of mush. You don't know what you're doing. So no joke. He went into the house and he got me a copy of Rush Limbaugh's book, The Way Things Ought to Be. I read it over a weekend and figured out I was a conservative. And ever since then, like I said, I've been a political news junkie. And so here we are today.
Well, I love that. Boy, he got you sorted right quick, didn't he?
Sorted right out for sure.
Yeah, oh, good. Well, so you were hooked on, was it politics specifically, conservatism? What was it that really drew you into this arena?
Conservatism and conservative politics for sure. When Fox News started to become popular, I was watching Hannity and Combs and Bill O'Reilly and all the conservative talk show hosts on there. And then I started to expand where I would get my news and things from. And then over the years, as you get older, certain things become more important to you. Politics becomes more impactful to your life. You know, who you vote for really matters. And then, I just dove in headlong all the way into the conspiracy theory stuff, which has become conspiracy fact today.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true for a lot of it. That's certainly true. So a lot of people right now are wanting to just go stick their heads in the sand when it comes to politics. You know, the rhetoric has really been inflamed. People have gotten pretty nasty. There's been canceling and swatting. And a lot of people just can't hack it. But you got out there bravely, face and all, and started this account. What led you to be so bold and start Doge Update Guy accounts?
Well, when President Trump said he was going to put Elon Musk in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, I thought, my goodness, they're going to uncover some things that are going to be absolutely outrageous. And I have served in the military. I've got plenty of friends that have worked for and since retired from the federal government. And we've all seen examples of fraud, waste, and abuse from within those channels which we worked. Like I said, military, FBI, Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Commerce, places where I know people worked. And when they announced Doge, I thought, man, I'm going to go dig up the Rand Paul Festivus report from 2024. And that's one of the very first things I read off on my Doge Update Guy channel that really took off on TikTok. I think I got something like 2.7 million views.
Wow.
And all I did was read off the list of ridiculous things that Rand Paul has been reporting on, I think for 10 years now. And it just took off. And then as Doge started to dive into the fraud, waste, and abuse, the things that they were reporting were just as ridiculous as what was in the Festivus report. So it was really, quite frankly, easy. You just had to be willing to go out there and read it and put yourself out there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised it took off as much as it did. I think that we were in a time in our culture when people had been wanting that evidence, and Doge was sort of that catalyst that went in and started to knock over that first domino, right? Like all these things started coming out, and what we had maybe thought was happening, but we weren't sure, it finally got exposed, and it was pretty thrilling, I think, for the American people to be sort of vindicated in a lot of these conspiracy theories that we had that turned out to be true, or these, thoughts that some of these things were actually happening. And really, in fact, you guys, Doge found things that were way worse than what we had anticipated. What was in the Festivus report as bad as what Doge found, or not so much?
Well, no, it was just as bad. $20 million for an Iraqi Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can go right here to the list real quick and read
Yeah.
you off a handful. And folks, you can go Google Rand Paul Festivus report, and they will list them right out for you. The federal government funding of a circus is a sideshow. Over the past several years, the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, granted Fern Street Community Arts, Inc. $365,000 for circus performances. Let's go to another one.
Yeah, we want the bad ones. The good ones / bad ones.
Oh, well, here's a Department of State production featuring your hard-earned money. The Department of State paid the Royal Film Commission $873,584 for movies in Jordan. Why can't they make their own movies? Why are we funding movies in foreign countries? I don't know. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Give me a minute. I'll find another good one.
Well, we also just are deciding to give the state of California something like $750 million to entice filmmakers back to Hollywood. So I'm not sure why we would be putting that money overseas and not here in our own country.
Right. At least the folks working on those movie sets will be spending their dollars in this California, and we could keep it here where it belongs. Here's one of the most shocking ones. Americans are paying $892 billion in fiscal year 2024 on the interest on our debt alone. And it's going to exceed $1 trillion here shortly, especially if Jerome Powell doesn't quit or be fired and replaced with somebody else, so we can bring the Fed funds rate down so we can stop overpaying on the federal interest on the federal debt. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, you would think that Americans would understand. We have credit cards, we have interest, we see how quickly it racks up. But for some reason in our minds, people weren't understanding the concept that we pay upwards of $1 trillion just on the debt alone, and that gets passed to the taxpayer. So not only do we need to bring the debt to a reasonable amount, but we've got to stop gushing dollars just paying interest on it. It's remarkable.
Well, right now, when you flip the switch, the electric, the lights come on. There's milk in the fridge. There's a chicken in the pot. There's a loaf of bread in the pantry. Right now, Americans, we still have a relatively good life. We haven't really had to suffer. And that's why I don't think enough people have said, I think I want to get involved. Well, they're not, nobody's hurting bad enough, but they are starting to feel the pain now. And that's why the tagline in my videos is, hello, my fellow overtaxed citizens. Here's today's daily update. Because we're absolutely getting hammered by taxes. I'm here in Illinois. We are so taxed. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've got the second highest motor fuel tax in the country. We've got one of the highest property tax rates in the nation. Our sales tax is absolutely ridiculous. And every time you turn around, there's a new tax being levied or a new rule being pushed out there that is raising the cost of doing business in Illinois. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And it is impossible to save money. You got to have two parents working at all times just to make ends meet. So I think people are finally getting fed up enough, and we've got the right president in place and the right attitude in the White House right now that speak up. And I think that was the other part of it as well. I don't want to stick my head above the weeds because it might get shot off.
Right. I think a lot of Americans just assumed California was the state that was getting taxed into oblivion, but it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And you're right. We have a president in the White House who understands business and finance and is running the country like a business. So the direction that we were going was so unsustainable, and it's going to be a great relief to this country to see these cuts of waste and fraud actually codified. And I want to ask you about that. Starting off with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And it's just been signed. It's went House, Senate, back to the House and to President Trump on his desk. And he signed that on July 4th, which was extremely fitting. But
Yes.
It caused a pretty big rift, maybe an irreparable rift between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Now, of course, we have seen that a lot of the Doge cuts are coming through the House, and those are going to be codified. It's not going to happen all at once, but in phases. Do you think that the lack of perceived Doge cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was the cause of the rift between those two?
I don't know. If you read into some of the rumors and news articles out there, there were some internal, there were some people within the Trump administration that drove Elon out, and I don't know the reasons behind it. So I think you had two huge egos trying to occupy a one small space, one pushing, and the other saying, look, we've got to be a little more pragmatic. We found a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse, but this is Washington. We have to do it in a certain way in order to make these cuts last. And the example that we had, the $9 billion rescission package, right? The $9 billion rescission package. Well, that was money that had already been authorized by Congress that they took back. So if we found $1 trillion in waste tomorrow and said, we're just not going to pay out the money this year, well, it could be reauthorized next year, right? So that money had to be taken away. So there is a sausage making process, as they like to say in Washington, to put things together so we can have a final end product that makes sense. So it's going to be slow. And I think there are a lot of powers that are going to try to slow it down as much as humanly possible because it is their gravy train. Yeah. So let's look at USAID and what they were doing with U.S. taxpayer dollars. Not only were they, as far as I'm concerned, laundering money, in a lot of cases, they were using those funds against the American taxpayer for things that didn't benefit the United States. Right. And I think that's why they went after USAID as one of the very first things they did, because they knew what was going on there was not in the best interest of the country. So they were able to shut that agency down, taking away the mechanism and taking away the ability to deliver that money. And now we've just got to continue to unfund that. So, you know, Elon and his big chainsaw that he came through with, I'm absolutely for it. But unfortunately, there is a process that in order to make these cuts permanent, and they don't like it. I mean, think about all of the people who made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in D.C., and now that their gravy train has come to a halt. So it's going to be a process. It's going to happen. It's just not happening the way that a lot of people want.
Yeah, which is so surprising to be on the other side and be pushing for things like, you know, gay and transgender curriculum in the Middle East, or these, you know, the Sesame Street overseas, or whatever it is that was so outrageous. And now a lot of people are leaving those positions, or there are no longer positions to be had. And there are tears and people very upset and protests. It's quite remarkable.
Boo-hoo.
Well, they've, you know, people on both sides of the aisle have advocated for cutting this waste and fraud. What do you think? Now, you mentioned some of the kind of most outrageous examples of waste that Doge has found. What do you think has been the most egregious kind of chunk of waste that Doge has found in these past 6 months?
Medicaid, Medicare abuse. That's where the next, I think, one of the biggest sources of fraud comes into play, especially when they went into the Treasury and said, you're making all these payments, but you're not coding where these payments are going. Where's this money going? And, you know, they tried really hard to keep the Doge team out of there so they wouldn't understand what was going on and couldn't figure out where that money was going. So you look at all the people that were on Medicaid rolls, Medicare, Social Security. We got people on there that are 300 years old. Yeah. Give me a break. This isn't, if you think this is just a series of unfortunate events, I got a bridge I want to sell you somewhere, because it's not.
Well, people do, Aaron. People think they're very upset. And the hot talking point is just, oh, Trump is doing away with Medicare and Medicaid, and poor people who need it aren't going to be able to get it. What do you say to people who have bought that narrative that this is just a horrible thing and that it's going to really harm a lot of people?
Well, for some of them, you could actually show them that there are now work requirements that to get your Medicaid, for example, work 20 hours a week or volunteer, for example, for able-bodied people. What is wrong with that? Taking away Medicaid from non-citizens, what is wrong with that?
Yeah, you're
There's nothing
absolutely
wrong
right.
with that.
You're
But
absolutely
if you
right.
were
There are a lot of people who are taking advantage of the system, right?
correct, but if you only get your news from MSNBC or CNN or Rachel Maddow or some of these other left-wing talking heads, you're going to believe everything they say. And what I find infuriating is that most of us want the same thing. We want safety, security. We want to have a happy country with healthy people, right? But there's two different ways to go about it. You know, people on the left say more government is better because they'll take care of the problem. And those of us on the right that say, no, I would rather take care of those things myself. I don't want the government taking money out of my check in the form of taxes to put it into a program we all know that is going to be used and abused. And we've proven it time and time again. All these social safety nets, we need to have them. They need to be there. We are a caring, compassionate country, and there should be unemployment. There should be Medicaid for those that can't afford health insurance. You know, no one in this country should be homeless, but not everybody should be able to live in a mansion. We all contribute differently economically across the board, and we just can't give everybody everything. But, you know, does that make sense?
No, it is a great explanation, and I think people need to hear this. What's so important to understand is that this truly is fraud that is being removed. It's not removing services from people who truly need it, and now the government is saying, well, we don't want to pay for that for you to have it. It is people who've been taken advantage, who have fraudulently just tried to bleed American taxpayers dry. And you have finally a presidential administration who's putting an end to that, putting the foot down, saying we are not going to allow this any longer. But I think what was shocking, too, to learn that was exposed, and of course, you know, our legacy media outlets did not want to cover this, was that it seemed like no one had looked into this for absolutely decades. We were finding, as you were saying, records, document systems, you know, below ground and things that were so archaic and so much fraud that nobody had even taken a side-eye glance at for absolute decades. So when I hear people criticizing this, it's a little bit difficult to understand, I think, because this will in turn benefit everyone who really does truly need it and the taxpayer who doesn't need it, but this is the way our government and our society runs as we pay into it. So I appreciate hearing from you on this. And I want to ask you too, so Doge was set up obviously to be a temporary organization under executive authority with the goal of finding $2 trillion in waste. Now, they've already identified $115 billion of waste, influenced 17 pieces of legislation like the Bitcoin Act of 2025. They've introduced congressional member term limits, the No Rogue Rulings Act. Then there are about 69 executive orders that it's influenced as well. But it's also led to 67 lawsuits, mostly to do with people who are upset over being fired. So what do you think about Doge continuing? Do we need it to continue to try to find that $2 trillion and meet that goal? Or has it gotten us pushed off in the right direction enough that the work can continue without an official Doge organization?
Why would you not want it to continue? I mean, that is their mission, and their goal is to root out fraud. And the limited time that Doge was created for is not going to be enough to get the job done, right? It's just like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. You know, you've got to do more to it, and it's going to take a little bit longer. Why not leave it permanently? Why don't you have a staff of people that goes out and continually does forensic audits on every single government department out there to ensure that somebody is not getting over on it? Absolutely flat out overtaxed. Mm-hmm. I mean, this has been going on forever. As a little kid, I used to love to watch 2020 on Friday nights with my dad.
Me
And I can
too.
always remember John Stossel. Yes, I swear. And John Stossel would always come on, and he would have some example of fraud, waste, and abuse. You know, the Pentagon that, you know, buys $1,000 hammers and $400 toilet seats and, you know, $600 screwdrivers, right? And he still does those kinds of pieces today. So there's nothing new about this. There has just been no political will in D.C. to go out there and do anything about it. Because think about it. When you get elected into Congress, you're a rock star. You're absolutely untouchable. You are a popular person. You've got lobbyists coming in talking to you every day. You are positioning yourself for long-term financial success, Nancy Pelosi, and what's his other name? Dan Crenshaw, right? So you're positioning yourself for long-term financial success. You're going to have a great retirement package. You're going to have fantastic health insurance. And if you do the right thing for the right people, guess what you're going to have if you decide you don't want to be in office anymore? You're going to have a nice job when it's all said and done, and a fat stock portfolio. So why would you have any political will to do anything in D.C. that would upset the apple cart?
Yeah, I mean, and it also counters our system of checks and balances by just letting
Yes.
things continue on like that forever. So, no, I absolutely think we should keep on it. It's like lifting the big rock and the cockroaches scatter, right? You put it back, they're just going to go find somewhere else to go. So, I do think that it needs to be kept an eye on in perpetuity going forward.
The mere fact that Congress people cannot be convicted for insider trading is absolutely outrageous. They threw Martha Stewart in prison for something stupid. Is insider trading, right? She had insider knowledge, but politicians do it all the time. There are plenty of TikTok channels out there that track government trades. There's software out there, apps you can download that says trade like Pelosi, right? And they trade on insider knowledge. They know what legislation is going to get passed and the influence that it's going to have on the stock price of a particular company or particular segment of the market. So why are they allowed to get away with it? Do as I say, not as I do. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And again, the political will has just never been there until people have been squeezed to the point where we just can't take it anymore. And I don't think we are going to take it anymore. I think we are seeing the right attitude in DC, whether you like how rough around the edges President Trump is or not. We need a bull in the china shop right now. We need to wreck the system, so to speak, or reset it. That's probably a better way to look at it. And just get rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse. Get rid of the folks that are entrenched in the bureaucracy that are fighting against us because they don't want to give up their cushy jobs either.
Yeah.
And some of those folks in the bureaucracy, their ideology is not one that I care for in a lot of cases.
Well, there's good legislation coming forward. I mean, the insider trading is essentially Washington, D.C.'s worst kept secret.
Right.
Everyone knows what's going on. And you can look at not just members of Congress, but a lot of political leaders who go into office with very minimal assets and holdings and come out multi millionaires with, homes and the portfolios. And so now there is not just the Pelosi Act that has been put forward to put an end to that, but bill and legislation put forward to put term limits on members of Congress, which absolutely should be happening. They can't just, they're not Supreme Court justices. We can't just kick it in there until you get wheeled out in the wheelchair and only brought back for someone to fill in your bubble to vote for whatever Democrat candidate there is, and you're 112. Well, let me ask you this. So you have a huge following. You're very popular online, particularly on TikTok, and we both love and are highly suspect of TikTok. But you get a lot of feedback. You have a lot of people engaging with you. So what are you getting from your online following? What is your most typical comment, response? What are the people saying in response to your daily Doge updates?
Nothing's going to happen to anybody. No one's going to get arrested. No one's going to get prosecuted. No one's going to go to jail. Nobody that has broken the law in D.C. is going to pay the price in any significant way whatsoever. And that is a common theme across the board.
Gosh, I'm sad, but I also see that in a lot of comments and hear those sentiments frequently. I think, and I've been speaking to this quite a lot frequently and recently because this is sort of just the temperature of the day, is that people feel so discouraged that we are finding, we're finding the criminal activity. We're finding the waste, the fraud, the abuse. We're seeing what Obama did during his term. We're seeing what Nancy Pelosi did. These things are finally coming to light. We're getting the files, or some of them anyway. But there seem to be no consequences applied to anyone. So I would echo that sentiment that you're hearing and that you're reading from most of your followers, that's highly frustrating. We live in a civilized society where we have laws and people expect that other people are going to follow the law. And when there are some laws for some classes and not for others, it is highly frustrating for people. So do you think that's going to continue? Do you think that's the case? And that's what we're in for, is just we have the information, but there are not going to be any investigations or prosecutions?
No, I think President Trump and the Department of Justice does not have a choice at this point in time, especially given the way that the Epstein situation has been handled. If they don't go and indict and arrest and put some of these people on trial, I don't think they're going to forgive him. So you've seen the news cycle heat up over the weekend and today that indictments are coming. Maureen Comey got fired. So they're really stirring up a hornet's nest. And hopefully we can see some of these folks who deserve what's coming to them get what's coming to them, and justice be done. So we'll see if it happens. I think it will. I think if we can get the economy continuing to improve, then we see some justice happening that people are going to say, okay, I feel good. I don't feel like I've been disappointed. I don't feel like I've been much more would have happened, but there's more money in the bank account at the end of the month. The cost of eggs and ground beef has come down. The cost of gas has come down. My life is improving. And that's the most important thing, is that we see the American people and their lives improve. We need to see wages go up. We need to see inflation come down so we can get some breathing room and feel like we can live our lives and get ahead instead of fall behind.
Absolutely. Well, one of my favorite things to do on the show is just predict the future, because I feel like people, when I interview people and they have their area of expertise, they're so well suited to try to figure out, based on what's happened over the very short 6 months that Trump has been back in office, what's going to happen going forward. So I'd love to hear you, Aaron, predict the future in a lot of these cases. What's going to happen with Doge? What's going to happen economically? What's going to happen with some of these files and conspiracy theories being brought to light? And no rush on these. I know I just put several things in front of you, but
Sure.
But let's start with Doge. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen with Elon and Trump? Are they ever going to patch that relationship back up?
I think those two will patch their relationship back up. It'll just happen. Guys, we hug it out, right? We'll get over it. If you're waiting on a Doge check, please don't hold your breath. I don't think that's going to happen. Besides, if you see your wages go up and we see inflation and taxes come down, in the long run, what you're going to earn and what you're going to be able to save and purchase is going to far exceed what you have gotten a one-time Doge payment. So, yeah, would it be nice to see a $500 or $1,000 check? Hell, I'd take it. But don't hold your breath. I don't think that's going to happen. As far as Epstein files, we're probably going to see a watered-down version of some finger at someone, and something's going to happen. But I dare not try to predict exactly what that's going to be, because I just don't know, like many of us. As far as the midterms go, next year, I know that's a big concern for everybody. If we can see the wheels of justice turning, and if we can see the economy improving, I don't think we're going to get destroyed in the midterms. However, if these things don't happen, gosh, we're going to be in bad shape.
Yeah, that's true. What do you hope will happen on all of these fronts? I've asked you what you think might happen. What's your hope? What ideal situation? What would you like to see in 26 and 28?
Ideally, if we're gonna say what we really want, I would love to see tariffs continue. I'd like to see jobs reshored. We've talked trillions of dollars of reinvestment in manufacturing in this country. Those are the jobs that pay. Service jobs don't pay. Manufacturing jobs, those are what pay. So if these trillions of dollars of investments come back into the United States, we're going to see that economy get stronger, and we're going to see these companies be leading the world like we used to. That would be ideal. The economy is got to be the number one thing for people, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, we need justice on a lot of things, but we have to bring the American economy back so people can go back to work and feel good.
Absolutely. Mike Rowe has been a really powerful voice, especially recently, on encouraging students coming out of school to go into trade schools, to pursue the trades, to pursue things like manufacturing and mechanical engineering, or even those areas like, house painting, plumbing, being an electrician, because he believes that we're at this kind of turning point economically, in which, the technology, all the coders are going to be obsolete. AI is going, a bit haywire. We're trying to get our heads and hands wrapped around that. And so it's interesting to hear you touch on that point as well, because I do think we're going to have to make a shift in how we educate and train our generations coming up into the workforce. We're bringing the jobs back. We're bringing the manufacturing back. It's opening up, and we're going to need these people, and we don't have them right now, do we?
We don't, and we don't have a strong middle class, and the middle class votes with their wallet. So if you can make more people dependent on the government for their ability to live, you're going to have a group of people that are always going to vote for what the government tells them to vote for. But if you have a strong middle class you have lower taxes. Those are the folks that are going to dictate what happens in Washington, because they're going to say, wait a minute, you are taking money away from me and we don't like it. That's a wasted program. You know, the bridge to nowhere, that stupid train in California that's never been built that billions have been spent on. We could go on and on and on. So if we can repopulate the middle class with good paying jobs, we're going to lay a solid foundation for voters who are going to start to think a little bit more about politics, instead of people that are just going to blindly vote left because that's what pays their bills. That's what pays the rent. That's what pays their groceries. That's what takes care of them, right? So that solid middle class needs to come back. And that is only going to happen if we restart the manufacturing base, the steel mills, the automobile industry. Think about the car companies that were leaving the country that Trump said, whoa, Ford, if you go build in Mexico, we've got a problem. Now, all of a sudden, well, we're not going to do that now. We're going to build here in the United States. So we need to keep that up. We need to get rid of this green nonsense, as far as I'm concerned, because that is a boondoggle. It has wasted billions and billions and billions of dollars on things that haven't come to be. And we need to reinvest that in manufacturing.
Yeah. I'm out here in the sort of epicenter of taxpayer dollar waste in California. And so when you say we could talk about this all day, I could certainly go toe to toe with you on talking about the billions that have been wasted in our state alone. But it sounds like it's happening where you are, and it's happening all across the country. We're just sort of on the forefront of the more horrifically large amounts of money that has been wasted. Thank goodness, though, the federal government has decided to stop dumping billions into the train to nowhere, which still only goes nowhere, truly. And there's a little piece of a bridge, and there's a piece of a train, but that's all we've got.
And don't get me wrong. If you could build high-speed rail that was built on budget, on time, that worked, and it was a good use of American taxpayer dollars, do it.
We want it. We'd love it. We would love it. A train from the middle of Illinois up to Chicago that could get you there in 60 minutes. We would love it. But we all know what is required to build a project if you're using federal dollars. And there's where all the fraud, waste, and abuse comes in. It has to be so convoluted that there's no way for you to undo the records to figure out, well, who screwed up and who got paid that shouldn't have, or how much did we get overcharged, right? Yeah. How do you spend billions of dollars and not 1 foot of track be laid? Yeah. Well, it's the homelessness issue too. $26 billion and homelessness rose 6%. It's watching the Palisades be rebuilt with low-income housing that I'm sure is not going to be, they're not going to waste their money there. They're going to do that as efficiently as possible. And so you see the real dichotomy between, when the government wants to be wasteful and when they want to save their dollars. And again, it just leads to taxpayer frustration. But I love hearing from you on these topics. You're so well informed, and I know you're doing a regular show now with the real Brett Lee, our friend, Doge official, who we were very excited to unmask right here on Politically Basic. How is that going, and where can people find you to watch that show?
So on Friday nights, you can find the real Brett Lee or Doge Update Guy on YouTube or Instagram for both of us, and we're driving our feed. And it's kind of, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants at the moment. We can take actually live calls on the show, which is kind of cool.
Fun.
We've done a total of 4 so far, and we want to try to make it, we want to have guests on, so maybe we can have you on sometime. We've got the mechanics of it figured out. Now we're just trying to get a little show structure in there, I should say, so that we've got a show that people want to come back and watch and listen to. So we hope it grows over time. We like talking about these things. I think it's important that Americans get more involved in politics. You don't have to be an expert, but in your gut if you're not doing as well as you used to do.
Absolutely.
Right? You just know it. Yeah. But maybe you can't pinpoint it. But you have to be able to open your ears and eyes a little bit and be willing to listen and or talk about it. And so many people, they know what's happening to them, but they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to seem uneducated, right? So they just keep their mouth shut. There's no dumb question. If you think you're getting hammered and overtaxed, raise your hand and go, I'm getting overtaxed. Yeah. How come my property bill goes up every year, but I don't get any more services from my city? I don't get any more government for my dollar, right? My roads aren't better. My grass isn't greener. It doesn't make any sense at all because those dollars get wasted more often than not.
Yeah. Well, I love what you guys are doing. I'm definitely going to call in. Please have me on the show. I'll be your California generalist expert. But the reason I started Politically Basic was just that, so that people could be welcomed back into talking politics. We were so fearful, especially during 2020. It was like, don't talk about any of these things. Churches don't talk about it. Don't go to family holidays
Right.
and mention anything political. And politics became a bad word. And I wanted to do what you guys are doing, which is welcome people back in and say, it's okay. You can say anything. You can ask anything, and find community in talking about these things that connect us all on so many levels. Everything is political, and we really find what connects the dots for us as humans when we talk about these things. So I love what you guys are doing, and I love that you're encouraging other people to come into that too.
Yeah, and it's not one-sided. We're not there to be combative. We're not there to mow people over if their opinion is different. If you want to come on and say, you two knuckleheads have got it all wrong and this is the way it should be, I'm happy to listen to you. Doesn't mean I have to agree. We can agree to disagree. But it seems in America today, it's so far divided to the extreme right and so far divided to the extreme left that there is no common ground. And I tell people this all the time. I'm no fan of the Clintons, but the Clinton years were some of the most common sense years in Washington, D.C.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well,
and a Clinton Democrat is today's Republican.
yeah,
Because
that's
if you go
what's
back
so
and
interesting.
yeah, if you go back and listen to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all those long-term congressional people, they were pro-border security. Marriages between a man and a woman. I mean, all these common sense conservative ideals, they were behind it 100%. And now you can go back and find clips of the exact same people doing a complete 180 going, we need to have the borders wide open. We can't close the borders. The president just doesn't have the unilateral authority to go down there and shut that down. And if you don't want to, this person to be able to love that person, then there's something wrong with you. And we're gonna delete you. We're gonna, what's the word they use? Cancel you, right? But if you go back into the 90s, we had a healthy economy. We had a more balanced budget. We had work requirements for Medicaid, Medicare, and welfare, right? So that was a good time in our country, right? Bill Clinton was a good politician. Let's just call it what it is.
Absolutely.
What he's done on other things, I don't agree with. That's why I don't really care for the Clintons. But go back and analyze his presidency, and there were a lot of good things that were done. That if we could just bring some more of that, we can meet in the middle of the aisle on most things, then the country would be better off. But we don't meet in the middle of the aisle on anything. We've got people out there. If we didn't have like MTG out there just being a bulldog and not taking any nonsense from anybody, there are some things that may not have gotten done. Chip Roy, for example, same thing. A lot of these folks, Matt Gaetz, I mean, a lot of these folks just don't take any. Sorry, they just don't.
It's true.
But we have to have people with a backbone willing to stand up to defend, their constituents. That's why they're there.
100%. I know you really wanted to vote for Bill Clinton. I can hear it. But it's so true. So everyone has moved to the left, so much so that the Democrat Party has sort of gone off a cliff in a way. They don't know who they are anymore. They can't be cohesive on issues. They're very fractured. And so it's been interesting to see that progression. And I talked about this in another interview, but the parties used to really overlap on a lot of issues. And if you look at the data on it now, we're just completely separated. There's a absolute, Red Sea splitting of space in between the right and the left now. And it's more difficult to find common ground. But I love that we're having these conversations. I love people like you, people like Brett, who are really throwing the doors wide open again for people to be interested in politics, interested in things that matter to them, and be able to speak from any level of expertise and any level of interest, just speak very openly and candidly on it. So if you could leave my listeners with one final thought, something to encourage them along those lines, send us off here, Aaron, with something inspirational to close out the show here.
Well, when the news media is telling you that Trump is losing approval and it's going to go sideways and we're not going to win the midterms, that is the media trying to spin a narrative to discourage you from supporting the president. Am I happy about everything that he's done, especially over the last month? Absolutely not. But is he doing more of the things that I think that need to happen in order to put us back where we need to be? Absolutely. So just keep your chin up. Don't allow people to discourage you. Take a break from the news for a day or two at a time if you can. I'm guilty of not doing that. And I've been having to do that lately because the news cycle has been so crazy and overwhelming. And just be critical. Use your critical thinking skills and don't be discouraged. Right. I think we're headed in the right direction, and think it's going to be a bumpy ride, but I think in the end we're going to see smooth sailing. It's just going to take a little bit.
I love it. You're so calming. Your voice is so relaxing. I think you're doing the right thing here, and I look forward to seeing where you take this, where you and Brett take your show, and I just encourage you to continue walking through those open doors, because you're doing a great service to people, breaking down this information and welcoming people into the conversation. So on behalf of everyone who knows about you and will know about you now, we just thank you for the investment of time and energy that you're putting into this. And we will be watching and be excited to see where you take this in the future.
Well, Kyle, I appreciate you having me on the show. Like I said, this is the very first time somebody's interviewed me. And as you can tell, I was prepared, right? I got the microphone, the headphones. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Just like I said, I think it's important that the American people become engaged in politics again. Start at the local level if that's what you need to do. You can work within your own city's politics, your county politics, your state politics, all the way up to national politics at the federal level. So just get re-engaged, ask questions, and don't continue to let things happen to you just because you don't want to raise your hand and go, look, I need you to explain this to me a little bit more.
Absolutely. Very wise words from you. Our friend Aaron, the Doge Update Guy, thank you again so much for coming on the show with me today. I hope you'll be back in the future.
You're welcome. I'd love to come back.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic, where we break down the basics of all political issues so that you can decide. Be sure to follow us at politicallybasic.com and at Politically Basic on all socials so you don't miss a single episode. And we will see you next time.